Physical abilities such as strength, speed, agility, endurance, and coordination are fundamental in sports. But mental abilities such as focus, concentration, motivation, confidence, resilience, and decision-making can heavily influence an athlete's performance, especially when it matters the most. If you want the mental edge in sport and life, check out the Max Out Mindset for Volleyball book and workbook or the Max Out Mindset for Softball book and workbook. A guide for coaches, athletes, teams, and parents to help you be in the best position to max out when it matters the most. Go to www.maxoutmindset.com.
You are listening to Max Out Mindset with your host, Dr. Larry Widman, performance psychiatrist and elite mindset coach to women in sports, business, and life.
Welcome to the Max Out Mindset podcast. This is your host, Dr. Larry Widman, sometimes known as Doc in the mindset world. I always say we do this podcast because we've been blessed over the last couple of decades to work with some of the best athletes, coaches, leaders, and teams in the country. And when we get a chance to talk about what we learned from them or what I shared with them, that's always awesome. And then when we have a chance to have a guest on, that's even better. And we'd rather learn as much as we can from our guest. More recently, we've added Coach Jess Connect onto the podcast. And we've been doing some joint ones together, and Jess makes this podcast better. She is a high-level elite volleyball coach, an elite person, and it's one of the best mindset coaches I've met in a long time, working with a lot of high school and college athletes around the country. I always say my definition of maxing out is given the talent and the depth and the health and the intangibles. Can a team reach the limits of their capabilities, or an individual? And then can they do it under pressure? Because I always say if you can't do it when it matters, what's the point? So today we have another guest. We've been talking softball a lot lately, and we're really excited to talk about it. We live the sport of volleyball as well quite a bit, but man, for more and more names in the state of Nebraska are starting to match all the great volleyball players that come out of the state of Nebraska. Today, we have an athlete on who's pretty young, but man, a lot of accolades already. She was the Gatorade Player of the Year. She was the Max Prep Softball Player of the Year. She was a part of a team at Scott Catholic that won 2 state championships. She was part of a club team, Nebraska Gold, that won a national championship in 2021. She just finished her freshman year at the University of Washington, where she was named an All-American. Very hard to do freshman year. Helped take her team to the College World Series, had a record of 18-7, had a lot of strikeouts in the College World Series, pitched at an extremely high level. And we are really lucky today to have another Nebraska softball player on, Ruby Meylan. Welcome to the Max Out Mindset podcast.
Hello. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you. I've worked with Scott Catholic volleyball for the past 5 years, started working with your high school softball team this summer that you had been on in the past. But Ruby, when you heard my definition of maxing out, when you think of maxing out as an athlete or a team, what comes to mind for you?
Honestly, I don't know if I ever want to max out, because if I can max out, I feel like that's peaking, and I don't ever want to do that in my career. So that's what I think of when I think of that, honestly.
I love that answer. We've never had that answer before on here. Growth mindset, Coach Jess, right? I mean, when you hear that, Coach Jess, what do you think?
I think sky's the limit. I really, that's a great definition because it shows that you have goals and you will always keep getting better. So I constantly think of someone that's a self-directed and passionate about winning the day, winning the moment, winning every opportunity or every rep that you get. So Ruby, I'm on board.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So Ruby, for people who don't know you, we have a lot of athletes and coaches that listen to this podcast and parents. I gave a little bit of your background, but could you just give us a little feel for growing up and, was softball your only sport? When did you discover a love for softball? And take us up to the time that you basically got to high school and college and became an elite softball player. Give us a little feel for that.
So growing up, I actually played softball, basketball, and volleyball, and my parents wanted me to be a volleyball player. I mean, I'm 6'1". I was pretty good at it, but I grew up in a small town, Ashland, Nebraska, 3,000 people, and my best friend played softball. So I was like, well, I'm going to quit volleyball and play softball with my friends because that's who I wanted to hang out with. So I ended up I was just really strong and bigger than everyone else. So I ended up being pretty good at it, but not technical at all. And Kiki Stokes, who played at the University of Nebraska, is now the head coach at UMKC, actually was like, you got to go get her on a club team and like do something about this, because she could just see it from the beginning. I like really looked up to her, but she said that there was something special from the beginning. So I went and I got a pitching coach, and he's like, I think you might be good. And I was like, at that age, I had no idea. Like, I didn't even know what college softball took or like what it was like, but I just knew I wanted to do it. And my parents never ever told me I couldn't do something, so they were all on board for all of it. And it was like crazy the amount of training I wanted to do. I was like started lifting in like 6th and 7th grade, like was going into Omaha every single day with my dad to go train for like hours. It was crazy. And this was all me. And I just like had a really, really big passion for something. And I had people that would tell me like, stop, like you can't do all this. You're from a small town. Like, and I didn't care. And so I started getting pretty good because I was just bigger and stronger than everyone else. That's honestly like what has carried me through this. But I fell in love with pitching, and I went through a few different little club teams, and then finally I found Nebraska Gold, and that was like my home. I played for Beth Singleton for 5 years, starting in 8th grade, and that taught me a ton. And then being at Scott was awesome. I had Coach Engelkamp there, and now it's Coach Glatter, but Glatter was my hitting coach all through middle school and high school, so I know him super well too. Love him. So yeah, that's about it. But just a lot of passion and drive coming from me.
Where did that come from, this passion and drive? Because you said you were bigger and stronger, so that's cool, because that's something you don't necessarily have full control over at that stage. But where did this passion come in, drive? Where did you learn that from?
Well, my parents are both super hard workers. My dad played football at the University of Nebraska and the University of Wyoming, and my grandpa was actually, I never got to meet him. He died when my dad was 13 in a plane accident, but I've heard plenty of stories. He was a 2-time All-American at Nebraska. He played in the NFL. He was up for the Heisman. And I've just heard a lot of things about him. And I honestly just think it's genetic. Like, my dad watched him do that, and then I watched my dad and mom do that. So I think just like I've been always taught to like put everything you got into what you want, because nothing's going to chase you. You got to chase it.
Yes, I got one more thing I'm going to throw to Coach Jess, but when did you first realize that, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm confident, so I always kind of thought I was good, but I would say high school sometime, but I never settled. I knew there were people better than me and stuff like that. So like I took every opportunity as like a learning curve. Like when I did struggle in games and stuff, I never really like, I obviously I did let it get to me, but it was a positive thing, because it ended up allowing me to grow in the future and learn from that. So yeah, high school.
Somewhere there. So we call that growth through adversity. Coach Jess, what have you been thinking here?
Well, I think it's really great, Ruby. You were raised in a small Nebraska town, right? You are at the University of Washington. That is nowhere near Nebraska, right? But I want to touch base on the Nebraska roots of your sport for softball, right? Nebraska might be known as the volleyball state for female or women's athletics, right? There's a basketball presence too, but what does it mean to be a product of some of those coaches that you just mentioned, those that have taught you success on and off the field, in the weight room? Tell me what it means to be a product of maybe a Nebraska Gold, Scott Catholic High School, those things.
It's cool, because without any of those people, I wouldn't be even close to where I am. They've been honest with me when I need it. Had some hard conversations at times, like had to get on me at times. Haven't always been the easiest kid to work with. I'm a little stubborn. But it was all of those people I like love, like my parents, like they've always been there, and it's cool to like even now, like being in college, just like look at social media after a good game or something, and all those people are like, that's our girl. Like, it's just cool to have that support back home. And now that I'm home for the summer, just like seeing those people. And I was at Scott the other night just to go work out, and I saw some girls, and it was just cool to like be able to come back home and have all this support. And like being in Oklahoma City too, there were so many girls that I like know, and it was just cool. And my high school coach came down to watch, and it was, yeah, just, it's cool.
Did you think at the age of maybe 9, 10, 11, or maybe sophomore in high school, did you think you would ever be such a role model that you are to girls now at those young ages? What does that mean
No,
to you?
I was the young girl who looked up to all the Nebraska softball players when I was little. So, like I said, Kiki Stokes was like a huge role model for me. She would work out with me. She would do all that kind of stuff and kind of took me under her wing. But it's just cool now that I'm in that role to like give back to the younger girls. So whether it's here at home or in Seattle, like the girls after our games, I do as much as I can to say hi to them and sign their balls and stuff like that.
Well, and I really like pointing that out and bringing it to the light because softball is such a rapidly growing sport and you're fierce. You are a front runner, you are a leader, you are fierce in your confidence. And I think you have a lot of girls in the sport of softball, but also in other sports that are watching you. And that could be pressure. So
Yeah.
my next question would be, Ruby, how do you handle the pressure? And I know Doc will have some questions, but it's a lot of pressure. You have a lot of accolades. And I look at this list, right? But at the end of the day, you're a human. You're a great friend. You're a great daughter. I think there's some cool things. How do you handle pressure as an athlete and stay true to your roots?
I've always kind of enjoyed being under pressure. Like my dad used to call me a gamer. Like when the game was on the line, I was always the one that like wanted to have the ball or be up at the plate. So like pressure, um, for sure in high school wasn't a huge like factor, but I would say in college it was way bigger because if you look at my season, my preseason was like really, really good. And I had all these people like talking about me on social media and stuff like that. And then I get to conference play and I struggled a little bit. And so that was a lot of pressure, I think, just like having all these eyes on you. And I did let it get to me a little bit, but then like I just had to like go back and like watch video and see myself and how I played on the field. And I was like, wow, like I'm acting different because of all the eyes. And so I just had to take a step back and like look at myself. I'm like, dude, it's just softball. Like this is what you've been doing your whole life. So that's just going back to what I've always done and going back to what I did in high school. And before that, that's made me successful.
Doc, you've heard a lot of testimonies and stories of a very similar situation like this. What are your thoughts?
My favorite part is actually, this, the athletes don't always love it, is the struggle part, which is, she had this great high school career. I mean, it couldn't have ended better. You have this unbelievable start to your college career. And then for whatever reason, I think you gave us a little hint to it there, right? Got some outside factors in impacting your behaviors, so to speak, right? Not necessarily your skills. Give us a little sense of when you first started to struggle this season, whether it was at the beginning of the conference or when you recognized it, what were the behaviors that you were having? I call those the behaviors of your sport. And then what was the outcome? Like what was actually happening on the field because of the way, like you said, I was acting different. Tell us how you were acting different and then what did that lead to?
So if you've watched me play before, I'm a very like talkative, confident person. And I remember my first conference game we played at home. This is the first time playing in front of that many people. It was packed. There were like over 2,000 people there, which is big for softball. It doesn't sound crazy, but it is big for softball. And it was so loud. And I remember just like going out there and I was like nervous. And I've never been nervous before a game because I am a firm believer and you find confidence in your preparation. And I like have always been told to be the hardest worker in the room. That's what I always tell kids when they ask me for advice. I'm like, dude, the only thing you can control is working harder than everyone else. So that's something I do pride myself on. And so I knew that wasn't the problem. It was literally the pressure I think that I was actually applying on myself. I was like, I have to do all this. All these people are saying this about me. Like, I have to live up to this standard. But in reality, the standard that I set for myself was actually higher, but I was like putting pressure on myself to please these people who it doesn't matter. Like I'm the person that like it really matters to. So I think it did affect my like play a little bit. I would say for like a week or two. And I would like talk to my coaches and stuff about it, and we got me settled down, and finally I figured it out. But I think that's just something that everyone's going to go through when you play at a high level, and it's hard, but it's good to struggle a little bit in that aspect, because then you learn from it. Like hopefully I never have to deal with that again, and if I do, I know how to get through it.
When you got quiet or changed your energy level, what that would be obvious to see if we watched. Yeah. What did it do for your pitch? Like, how did it actually change what you were trying to accomplish on the field then? Tell us a little bit about how it translated into some negative performance for you.
Yeah, so I'm a pitcher that throws at a high velocity, and in college I had to learn that and the end of high school club and stuff, that like hitters can hit 72, 73 if it's flat. Like you actually have to place the ball and move the ball. So I think when I was out there, I was like just trying to overthrow. And when I overthrow, it's ineffective because the ball's flat. And any college hitter can hit flat 73 down the middle. So it doesn't matter. So like, I think the term that my pitching coach from home uses and my pitching coach at school is overthrow. And I was just trying to overdo it rather than trust myself and trust my mechanics and stuff like that.
I get it. So one last thing, throw it back to Coach Jess on something, is that you said that, look, confidence comes from preparation. We have 6 ingredients of confidence. I'm not going to review every one of them now, but our number one ingredient is preparation and hard work by far. But we often say that even the hardest worker in the room, the one who puts in the most work, when they make a mistake or if the pressure or something interferes and their self-talk goes negative, or they say, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough right now, or what's wrong with me, or whatever it may be, then our confidence takes a hit. Mm-hmm. So we call that our number 2 ingredient of confidence is self-talk. So my question is during that rough patch that you started to experience, did you notice any change in the way you talk to yourself?
To be honest, I don't think so. I've never been a person to say like, wow, I don't deserve to be here, or I'm not good enough. Like I've never struggled with that, like, which is a really, really good thing. I would say more so like after a bad game, like that game is constantly replaying in my head. Like I lose sleep. Like it's more so that rather than the self-talk. I don't really struggle with the self-talk.
Okay, so when you're replaying it in your brain, then later on, what's the conversation you're having with yourself then?
Just like, okay, so I'm a really, really big perfectionist. I've always been taught that, which can be good and can be bad. But I would just say like I'd analyze every single thing, overanalyze it, and constantly just like replay it in my head and be like, okay, what could I have done different here? Which can be a good thing because then you learn from it, but it's also like you can't let it eat you alive. And a college softball season's long and it's hard, and you're playing 3 to 6 games a week. And so it's like I had to find a way to move on to the next. So I would say I figured that out about as soon as around when postseason started. I was like, if I have a bad game, I really just got to like let it go, flush it, like don't think about it again. And I would tell people on my team, like specific people who I really like was close with and trust. I was like, if you catch me talking about something about that game, like shut me up, like tell me stop, like on to the next. So yeah.
Love that. So we'll come back to that. That's what we call our 3rd ingredient of confidence. And our teammates and coaches, if they know what we need, can help us move on and help us get out of our head. Coach Jess, I know you love thinking and talking about perfectionism and everything in that range. You've been listening. What are your thoughts?
He caught me smiling when you said you're a big perfectionist and that you fixate and you think and you think. Honestly, I think that's one of some of the ingredients that a lot of our high performing elite athletes have is they have that deep desire within to be perfect. So give me your definition of perfect, right? And because I just want to ask this, because a lot of our athletes we serve, it can be your biggest weakness or it could be your strength, depending on the athlete, the person, what they're overcoming, those things. What is your definition of perfect? And why did you fixate to the point it becoming negative?
Yeah. Oh gosh. At first, I think it changes. It's like, so I'll give you an example. So preseason, I like didn't give up a run for a few weeks. And so I like somehow in my head was like, I'm gonna go as long as I can without giving up a run. And I give up, we're in Houston, and I gave up a 2-run home run, I remember. And I was like, we won the game. We won the game 7-2. And I was happy. I was like, great, we won the game, whatever. But in my head, I was like, oh my God, I gave up a 2-run home run. Like, that's horrible. But like, I think that's the thing that I had to learn too, was like, that is still perfect. Like, that might not have been a perfect performance, but you won the game. So like, that's, so yeah, I guess I don't know what my definition of perfect is. It could change, but maybe it's not losing a game, it's a shutout. Like, I think it can change.
And this is good convo, right? This is great. We are in conversation about this idea of perfectionism. And so Doc and I do a lot of helping our athletes reframe their thought process.
Yeah.
So here's another question, and I promise I'm going to tie this all together.
Okay.
Are you more of a outcome based? So do you love winning or do you hate losing more? Which one has more of a fire in you?
I hate losing.
Okay.
I hate it.
Doc, what do you think about that answer?
It's probably the common theme or answer of every great performer we've ever talked to, great coaches, or most elite athletes and coaches in this world. They cannot stand losing.
Yeah.
And one of the dangers of that, though, is that some of them don't end up enjoying winning enough.
Yeah.
And then when they do win, it's very short-lived, the joy they have. And so there has to be eventually a balance of trying to figure out, is winning everything, meaning, or preventing losing everything, because then it's on to like, now what? Or maybe I'm not as fulfilled as I thought I would be. Or, all right, so I didn't lose, but I'm always worried about it now. And it takes the joy out. So I don't know if it ever got to a point to where it started to take a little of the joy away from you in terms of being more worried about, not being perfect or a negative outcome, even if you won. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, did it start to sap any of the joy from you at all?
Honestly, no. I love softball, probably. Like, I feel like I love softball more than anyone. So like, the joy was never gone when I'm playing. At least I would say maybe like when I'm not on the field or not doing softball things, that's when my mood would I would get down, because I'm like, why did I lose, or why did I perform poorly? Like, and I would like I said, like going back to like thinking about it all the time. And I think that's more what it was.
And I'm glad you shared that. Go ahead, Doc.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, and that's where the reframing is, right? Like, that's what drives you. And I would just say, continuing as, athlete off the field and right out of the weight room and all the things, is, can you enjoy the little wins, right? We call those progress goals or smart goals, or those smart victories. And what does that look like for you? Because I think you're going to continue to get better and better and better. And you're setting an example for some of those elite young softball players now. And if they know, wow, Ruby struggles with that, what are some key strategies that she learned so she still kept her joy, still won in the moment, right? And you're still always going to keep fixating on that next great goal. And I don't know, sometimes I don't like to use the word perfect, and Doc, you can chime in too, but there's something where I think being present in that victory, right? And if we can pursue excellence, and what does that look like? Because if you take care of some of those small things, that big outcome goal, which majority of elite athletes, it's winning, but what does it look like? Winning's going to take care of itself. So if I were to ask you, Ruby, what are you most proud of? Because I can say you worked your tail off this entire season. You had some big moments, right? But did you get that big W? Did you win the national championship? What's your answer?
No.
Okay. Now tell me what you're proud of in those moments leading up to that NCAA tournament run. What are you most proud of?
Honestly, I think just getting back to the program, back to the World Series, because we hadn't been since 2019. I think that's a huge stepping stone. And to be able to do that as a freshman was cool. And I think I'm going to base my career off of that. So like, my freshman year was like a really, really good learning experience. I had really high ups and really low downs. So, I think just like learning from those, and then honestly, like being my best towards the end was like the biggest thing I learned and like I was proud of, because I had my fair share of struggles, but I also had my fair share of really good things. So just using those to help my team get to where we wanted to be.
Doc, did she say anything in there perfect? Did she say perfect at all?
No,
did you hear the word perfect?
Didn't even hear outcome really there, did you?
Oh, what? Interesting.
Yeah, we heard highs and lows, which are part of growth, right? I want to stick with this theme of confidence for a minute, because the very first thing you told us early on is, look, I'm a pretty confident person.
Yeah.
But confidence also can be fragile a little bit. You kind of hinted at that. Like you have these so preparation, hard work, check. We got that with you. You crushed that. Self-talk, pretty stinking good. Maybe a little bit of ruminating, at different times after games and obsessing about it, but performance-wise, pretty good.
Yeah.
Third ingredient of confidence, and we're going to hit these next two here because you've hinted at them both, is when I'm in struggle, whatever it may be, I'm feeling stressed on the field or whatever, or at practice or leading up to the game, if my teammates or coaches know what I need, they can help me stay present. They can help me move on. And you hinted, like if someone catches you kind of ruminating about something from the past, which isn't helping you right now, to help you move on. Tell us what you've learned about confidence and the role your teammates or coaches play in helping you stay confident when you struggle.
Yeah. So my coaches at Washington are really good about like taking care of my needs. And so I'm just very open about how I'm feeling and stuff like that. So I would just tell them, I'd be like, listen, like if you see me pouting or getting mad, like get on me. Like I'm a person who like likes to be yelled at, kind of like that fires me up. So that, and also the same with my teammates, like Bailey Klingler, who's awesome. She was one that I was just like, listen, every time I was on the field, this is almost every single inning we played this year, I was like, stay with me. Like if I get quiet, they know when something's wrong, because I get quiet and I kind of like lose my fire, I guess. But I was like, you come talk to me and you tell me to like figure it out and whatever I need to do. But she was really good at it. So I think that's just important to like let your people know what you need, because ultimately they want the best for you. So
yeah, we always say that you have to let people know what you need, and then you have to be willing to let them in your brain, so when they do help, you don't ignore them. And so you hinted, do you need something different from your teammates as opposed to coaches? Because you said you kind of like sometimes to be yelled at, lit a fire. That's still pretty rare today, which is cool. But do you need it different from your teammates? Like, do you want them to yell at you, or do you need more positive sort of direct affirmations, or how's that different?
It's kind of funny because everyone on the field this year was very different. Like my shortstop, Riley, she was super positive. She's like, you got this. Like, I believe in you. And then Bailey would be like, she's honestly like very much like that too. But if it needed to be firmer or more harsh, she would do it. And that's what I needed. But I'd say teammates more so, probably encouraging, whereas coaches, I need you to like get on me a little bit.
Can you give us one example, and I'll see what Jess has to say, of something that happened where a coach then had to get on you like you wanted, and like what were you doing, and then what did they say to get you out of it?
We were playing at Oregon State, And another pitcher, Kelly Lynch, had started the game. She went 5 innings, no hitter. Okay. And I went in to close. We were only winning 2-0. So we just wanted to switch it up a little bit. And I get in there in the top of it would have been the bottom of the 6th inning. And I walk the first batter and my coach comes out. He's like, I brought you here to throw strikes, not walk people. And that's exactly what I needed. The next 3, I think I struck out the next 2 and got a ground out or something. It was just like exactly what I needed. Like, they know me. Like I said, I'm very open. So I create relationships very quickly and pretty deeply. So they just know what I need without me honestly even telling them. You can kind of tell from my body language.
And it all comes down to communication, right?
Yep.
It's easier said than done. Jess, what are your thoughts?
I love how your face lit up because you allowed your people, your coaches, your teammates to know you.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think as athletes and just as humans, we tend to think vulnerability is a negative, right? But you just shared a key thing, even for everyone listening, is you were open right away and you were transparent right away. Now, mind you, you trust this group of coaches, right? These are your teammates and it's a commonality. But was it ever hard for you to let your coaches and teammates know you? Or maybe if someone struggles with that, what are 2 key things that maybe you would suggest them doing to maybe start that vulnerability process? Let's say they're more of a shy type of a person.
I'm just big on relationships. So I think just creating and forming those relationships, it can be harder for different people. Some people are shy or quiet. But I think that is honestly the biggest thing. And then just like you said, just it's hard, but allowing yourself to be vulnerable and just share what you're feeling, whether it's good or bad or whatever. I think that's just important. And especially for team chemistry, that's huge. Because if we did team meetings weekly and we did everyone had to go through and there was like a list of questions in front of the whole team, no coaches or anything, but just the team. And we'd like say, okay, it's like, how are you doing? How are you doing in school? How's softball? Like, how are you feeling just life in general? Are you struggling with anything? What's something you feel good about? And so it's just kind of like openly telling everyone, like, this is what I need this week. Or I'm doing really well. Like, I just need you guys to keep being you and I'll help you with what you need. So that was a really good thing that we did that I think we're going to keep doing.
Regular team meetings and regular opportunities, intentional opportunities to get to know each other. Yeah. You being a freshman, tell me about that. How are those seniors? Was it scary? How did you make your adjustment?
It's weird right now with the 5th year thing. Like, you got girls. I was 18 when I came in and I was playing with a 23-year-old. So it's just like we're at complete different stages of my life. I'm beginning my career and she's ending her career, about to get married. Like, it's just way different stages of life. So at first I was a little intimidated, but these girls on my team this year were just like awesome. And they all kind of took us under their wings, the freshmen. And so after the first few weeks, I was like, oh, these are just like my big sisters. Like, they're going to be there for me, but also have the hard conversations with me if I need to be a better teammate or I need to work harder at something. So it was like a good balance of age, because what my coaches would always say is like, we have the experience with the 5th years, but we also have the young, like, hunger that is going to ultimately like drive us. Cause yeah.
Doc, what do you think? You worked with a ton of teams and you see some of these really cool aspects each athlete and age group brings. Do you agree with that? The young passion and fire from those youngsters and experience from the older crew?
I do. One of our common themes is that the great teams find a way to value everybody from top to bottom. And I do say it's the responsibility of the coaches, the experienced players, the starters, etc., that make sure everyone feels valued, whether you have a lot of stats or you don't play at all. And that starts at the top, and it starts with these meetings. So before I ask you this next question related to confidence, whose idea was it, or where does that come from for you to do these weekly meetings without coaches, to have a series of questions that basically is your sort of check-in for the week on how I'm doing in all aspects of my world?
I think some of the fifth years who were freshmen in 2019, which was the last time we had went to the World Series, and I think they were like seeded third or something. They were like picked to be a contender to win a national championship. So that was one of the best teams that's ever passed through Washington. And so they had said the fifth years that they did that their freshman year, and they thought it was like a really good thing because if the team can handle the team things before taking it to the coaches, I think that's the best opportunity for us to like be successful and grow as a team. So they decided to do that, and then we all were on board with it, and the coaches were too.
Okay, so let's stick with the team theme for a minute. We like to say here that you have to have a talent to compete for championships or make history, but it's never the talent that actually determines if you get there. If you don't have it, you're not in the discussion. Mm-hmm. What did your team do so well this year that had nothing to do with the softball talent per se, what I call the non-technical aspects of your sport? What did your team do so well this year that put you in the best position to make the World Series?
So we have this thing that we call Husky Fever, and I honestly don't even know how to like define it. It's just it doesn't have a definition. It's just a thing. Like it's something that when you're a Husky at the University of Washington playing softball, you just like can feel it. If you go back, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, go back to our regional. We were playing McNeese. We lost game 1, and they had to beat us twice. Well, we're down in the 7th inning by 7 runs, and we came back and it was 6 runs, but we came back and we won the thing and scored 7 in 1 inning. And that's what I describe Husky Fever as. And I think it's just like the passion for the program and the women who came before us and played at such a high level who have gotten us to be on this stage in the now. So yeah, that's what it is.
What it is. Jess?
Values, tradition, relationships, and clarity and focus. That's what I hear, Doc.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's switch gears. Stick with confidence. Mm-hmm. Our fourth ingredient in confidence is past success, which means you have to have success at some point in order to know you're good. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we're in struggle, and the example could be, I didn't play particularly well tonight, but we won, but they need me tomorrow. And you hinted at couple of your strategies, and we have a couple strategies we talk about with athletes when you're in struggle. How do you use past success as a mental skill to help you stay confident? You gave a hint that you maybe watch some film or you watch yourself. Can you talk about that process of either watching what I call a highlight reel or past success reels? What role that plays you, and does anything else you do to help you take advantage of past success to be confident if you're struggling?
Yeah, so me and my coach put together a playlist of I think it was just all my strikeouts from the year and I don't know how many there were at that time, but I would just sit there and watch it every night before. She put a song behind it. She asked me, she's like, what song? And then she put random little quotes in there in between. And I'd watched it every night before bed. And sometimes randomly throughout the day too. And that was just something that okay, if I can get my mind right before I go to sleep, I'll think about right things while I'm sleeping and then wake up and feel good. I think watching video and watching yourself be successful, it's might feel so horrible right now the way I'm playing, but this is just one game off, or this is one little thing and I'm here. So it's it's as simple as that.
Yeah, we love that. We call that a highlight reel. We encourage every athlete to have at least a minute or two, if not longer, of having something to go back to that reminds you of what you were thinking and feeling when you're at your best. And as you said, to go to bed or whenever the day to have right thinking, because our inner chatter is a form of self-talk, and we can either think right thoughts that are going to help us be a better student or a better athlete, or we can have thoughts that interfere. some athletes we know use their own visualizations to help them too. Do you use visualization at all as a mental skill? And if so, why do you do it and how does it help?
I do. I would go into our locker room before games with one of my coaches. She's a volunteer assistant. Her name's Shelby. She's awesome. And I would just take her in there with me and I would breathe and close my eyes and she would take me through an inning. So it would just be random. It'd be like whoever we were playing, it'd be like the first three hitters of their lineup. And it'd be like, okay, ball or like whatever. She slowed it down, like took me through my routine and then she'd call a pitch and then say like whatever, ball, strike, swing, miss, whatever. And that really just helped me like calm down. Like I'm a high energy, but before a game, I feel like the best thing for me is to be calm and then let my play determine my energy. So that was just a consistent thing that we tried to do. So
Ruby, have you ever had a time, now we're talking about composure, getting our nervous system right, mind and body right for any moments, but sometimes the big moments. If you had to put it in a number from 1 to 10, we talk about an arousal control dial. 10 would look at that you probably looked like you had about 10 cups of coffee and you're about ready to run through a wall and your teammates are like, all right, she's ready to roll. Most people don't do their best at 10. And a 1 would be, looked like Ruby just woke up from about a week-long nap and we're not even sure she's awake. And then we just go out there and crush it. Do you have a number between 1 and 10, 10 being so hyped, 1 being, almost dead? I mean, where you function at your best generally, do you know that where you fit?
I would say probably like a 6. I kind of experienced both this year. Like I was playing with it a little bit because like when I was struggling, we were trying to find like just things that worked. So I drink a lot of caffeine. So that was one thing where my coach was like, okay, cut back on that. Like try to see what that does for you. And then I was like, I feel like I could take a nap right now. So that didn't work. And then I overdid it and stuff like that. And then it was like, well, that's not going to work either. You're trying to throw the ball a million miles an hour. So I kind of like got my routine down with like how I needed to feel. And I knew before a game if I was or wasn't feeling right. I always knew.
So what did you do in a situation where you want to be at a 6 out of 10, but your nervous system's at, say, an 8 or 9 out of 10? You know you're too high. First, we call that awareness. So we talk awareness strategy. Awareness, I'm too hyped up. That's not going to help me. Or I'm underhyped. That's not going to help me. Or my self-talk stinks right now. That's not going to help me. That's not an issue for you, really. So did you have a time where it was more hype than you wanted it to be? And you're like, that's not going to work for me. And then what was your strategy to try to get a little bit closer to your 6s?
My first game at the World Series, that's obviously just a nerve-wracking thing for everyone. Danielle Laurie, who's like a really big mentor for me, she said that at the World Series, everyone's feeling it. Like, especially if you haven't been there before, everyone's feeling it. The person who's going to win is the person who gets rid of their nerves first. So, I was starting game 1 and I knew that I wasn't feeling nervous before the game, but then once I got in the bullpen, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of people like watching me right now. I went back into the locker room and I just sat there and like I counted my deep breaths and like I just kept going till I lost focus and I'd restart. And then I like I guess that's what I did. And I just tried to get back to my routine. And that game wasn't perfect. It never got to be perfect, but it was better than it would have been if I didn't do that.
So let's finish this stream of thought, and I'll have Coach Jess chime in. But when you talked about breathing, can you tell us exactly, you said you kind of counted your deep breaths. What's your breathing routine like? How do you do it?
Like how do I breathe?
Yeah, I mean, so when you say you take deep breaths, do you count your breaths? Do you time it? What do you do for a deep breathing technique to actually help you try to calm your nerves?
I just inhale through my nose and I try to like push out my stomach to actually just know it's not like a chest breath, which I do this on the mound too, in between pitches. And so I like try to push my stomach out and see, and then I hold it for like 2 seconds. And then I just like exhale, like breathe almost kind of hard, but not like, not super hard, but like, I think just to get it all out, and I count how many breaths I can get to, and then if I lose focus or like something distracts me, I'll start again and then see if I can get past that number.
And what does it do for you then? Do you notice a sense of kind of calming down? I mean, I guess one of the questions we have is like, what's your keys? Does your heart race when you're too hyped? Do you get shaky?
My heart races.
Okay.
I can like feel almost like not shaking, but you can, when you can just feel your heart like beating really, really fast. That's almost what it is. And it's almost like uncontrollable. Like, it's like, what I did nothing to, like, what is this? And so I just have to kind of like take myself back. And
we love that. We call that our fight or flight system. And sometimes it kicks off. Like you said, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And heart's pounding and I'm a little shaky. And then you can use your breathing, because there's some really cool science with deep breathing. When you breathe in like you did, it actually triggers a different nerve that goes through that diaphragm of yours into the calming part of your brain. It's part of what calms us down. That big out breath you take actually slows your heart rate down. So when you do it, there's a science behind why deep breathing works. But you pointed out, you have to figure out what works for you and how long you can do it. You also hinted at a little bit of a mindfulness technique where you focus on your breathing. And then when your brain gets distracted, you bring it back to your breathing. And then you have a little competition with yourself and try to beat it. So we're talking about a focus, refocus strategy. Jess, you've been listening. What do you have to add?
And this goes back to your routines, right? So the one that you did at the World Series, was that the one that you did at the beginning of the season? Like, how did you know when to change it? Are there still some that you stayed consistent with?
At the beginning of the season, I had no routine in between pitches whatsoever.
Time out. You had no routine?
No routine.
And you were pretty darn good?
I didn't know what to expect. I just kind of went in there and was like going solely on just like what I know. And so that's why I think this year was so important for me, because I learned how to like create that routine in between pitches, not only in between pitches, but like before a game and stuff like that too. But like I tried different stuff out. I tried focal points, breathing, talking, like just stuff like that. And I finally figured it out, and it wasn't always perfect. Sometimes I lost it, and I had to my coach was like, Ruby, get back to that. Like, make sure you're following that. That's the most important thing, because that kind of kept me going and consistent.
Ruby, say that for the people like louder in the back. And I'm being funny in this moment, because I think sometimes, Doc, we have athletes who just get so frustrated that it didn't work right away.
Yeah.
And I heard consistency. I heard you're adaptable. You were changing. You were consulting mentors and coaches to get a right routine, but also consistency. Yeah. So thank you for being an example and a voice for that. So now when Doc and I teach it, we have, look, Ruby said it. We didn't say it. Ruby said it. Mm-hmm. So I'm being funny, but Doc, I think you can chime in here too. You're really blowing me away though, to be honest, about your routines and your consistency. There's a maturity about you. I'm learning a lot myself, so I appreciate it. Keep rolling. But Doc, what are your thoughts on me being funny here, but being truthful?
Yeah, what the thing that keeps coming to mind is that Ruby said, nobody works harder than me. And preparation is hard work is what's got me here. And it's what got you into the first few weeks of the season too. Like, you just did what you did. You knew how to do it. You trained. But preparation and hard work is taking on some additional definitions now. It's taken on a mental routine, visualization, the use of a highlight reel, the use of breathing sometimes between pitches, the use of visualization before a game, sometimes using deep breathing to get to the right arousal control level for you. And those weren't even part of what defined preparation and hard work for your whole career that got you to one of the elite schools in the country. And so what we love pointing out to athletes is that the mental game eventually becomes extremely important for an athlete. Some people are wired like you kind of were through your career. I mean, and when you're wired a certain way and you work harder than anyone else, like, no wonder you had so much success in high school. But then, like you said, you get to college and a lot of people can hit a 73 mile an hour pitch. And there's way more to our game. And almost everything you've described that you really improved on outside of probably, movement and things, a lot of technical things you have to do better, is you've become much more diligent in your mental routine, and you have strategies for when your mind messes with you a little bit, or your body. And it doesn't mess with us as very much in high school for a lot of elite athletes, because they're better than everyone else. Usually they don't fail as often. And so that's why we love talking with college athletes, because the common theme has been, whether it been Jordan Larson in volleyball, like the thing she says is her hardest jump was from her senior year of high school to freshman year, harder than going to the profession, harder than going to the Olympics. And she said nothing was harder than that transition, for a lot of reasons off the field, just adjusting to life, but because everyone's great. And now my mind has to become greater. And so that's what we love. And that's what comes to mind, Jess, is that she has outlined so many mental strategies, some that are physical, but they're really mental. They're physical breathing strategies that allow our mind and body to calm down, that any athlete can use. And some of them have to use them way earlier than you, because they either aren't wired for being as confident as maybe you were in high school, and maybe they weren't as talented, and they have to work on their mental game even earlier than you did. But eventually, if you want to be great or the best at your craft, you've got to have your mental game match your physical game, and maybe even exceed it. So that's why we love you being so honest and saying, here's what I did. I did struggle a lot, but I worked through it, and I don't have it all perfectly figured out yet, but I'm going to keep adapting and adjusting. So Jess, that's what comes to mind to that. Jess, do you have any other questions for her?
I think one of the biggest things, if you could go back and you could give yourself, you're grinding in the youth softball club days and you're doing 3 sports, what advice would you tell yourself? And what would, knowing that where you're at today, you just helped lead your team to, the World Series. You had some really great awards as a freshman. Did you think you're going to be there at age 10, 12, 13?
Honestly, I knew it, but I think what I would tell myself is don't let other people tell you can't, because I had a lot of people telling me like, you can't pitch and hit, which I ended up just pitching, but like all through high school I did both. And I had people tell me like, oh, maybe you can play in college, not even close to a Power 5 or a top 5 program historically. Like, nobody believed in me except really like a few coaches and my parents and myself. And my parents even said, they were like, we were just really, really hoping that someone would take you'd play in college. And I think just like it always comes from you. It has to come from you, because if other people are telling you that you like to work hard and do the things that you need to do to be successful, it's never going to work out, because it's got to come from within.
So how'd you block out that noise, the naysayers, the ones that said you couldn't do it? Or did that fuel you?
It fueled me. I was like, I am literally just going to prove you wrong. I love seeing like hate on social media. And I know we're not supposed to look at it and stuff like that, but I can't help but like sometimes I see it just on my Twitter feed or something like that. It's like, that's funny. Like that makes me laugh, because I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, just wait.
So is there something that you did to block it out? I mean, you can still use it to fuel you, but is there a practice or a skill that you really developed to keep you focused on the main things and to not get distracted?
Just don't lose sight of the end goal. I'm not even close to my end goal yet. My end goal is to win a national championship or 2 and compete in the Olympics and win a gold medal. So that's ultimate. When I'm struggling or like, don't want to go work out or don't want to do this or that, I have to think of those things, and I'm like, what's going to make me be part of that or be able to do that kind of stuff. So I think just don't lose sight of the end goal.
Awesome.
Ruby, one thing mentally, one thing physically, that if you do them this year, you're 1% better. What's one mental thing, one physical thing that you can do for going into your sophomore year, that when you reflect back, you're like, well, that's why I'm better than I was last year?
Mental is just use the things mentally that I learned this year and carry them on to next year and try not to make the same mistake twice. It's gonna happen like at some point, but do my best to limit that. And then physically, I think this off season I'm really trying to get in really, really good shape. It was weird because in high school I was like the strongest I've ever been, and then I got to college, and I feel like in being in season, you guys know how it is. Like it's hard to stay strong in season. You lose it a little bit with being on the road and not eating as clean and stuff like that. So I feel like just getting to my strength up and then working on the little things that um affected my pitching, whether it's spins or stuff like that. So I have that all written down already. Like me and my coaches have already talked about that kind of stuff, but that's the physical stuff.
Okay, so I have one last question. It relates to parents, and because we really sense you have very supportive parents, kind of wired for kind of mental resilience too. But what advice do you have for parents that are listening in regards to how they can help their daughters that are in junior high or high school playing softball? How can they help them with their confidence? What kind of messaging do parents need to be giving their kids that they may not be doing as well as they could be?
Well, my parents were never the type to like I've heard some stories of parents that are like really, really mean to their kids after a bad game or something like that. My parents were never like that. They always just turned to, well, you just gotta work harder, or you just gotta do this, or go see your hitting coach, or go see your pitching coach. Like it was just stuff like that. So I think parents just encouraging their kids to work hard and like trust themselves. Like I called my dad all the time in season when I was like struggling too. I would be like, Dad, like I feel like I don't know how to pitch. And he's like, you've thrown 100,000 pitches in your entire life. Like, you know exactly what you're doing. So I think just parents just like kind of being a support system and just like listening, honestly, is the best thing.
I love that. All right, so I lied. I have one more question. Mostly because this theme of Nebraska, can you put into words what having a club team like, a club like Nebraska Gold, your high school, Scott, what opportunities do they offer you? What did they do for you so that you could go on the national stage anywhere, right? And play at a Power 5 school that's one of the top 10 teams in the country?
Yeah. I would say Nebraska Gold literally like made me who I am. There's a bunch of different people in the organization: Larry Swift, Beth Singleton, Nicole Butler, Darren Dubsky, Ryan Gladder. Like they are all just like so important people to like such important people to me. Like I think they just believed in me when no one else did. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't always the easiest kid to have around. I had to learn how to be a good teammate and learn how to be just I don't know, like a good person. Like just I wasn't always the best teammate when I was younger and stuff like that. So they just like stuck with me through everything and just taught me all that stuff that allowed me to get to where I am. And obviously the recruiting part of it too, they all were on board with that. Like talked to coaches when I needed them to, or reached out to coaches to get my name out there. So, and just to get to play on the national stage like that in travel ball was so important, because that's ultimately how you get your name out there. And competing against the best players from California, Texas, Arizona, all those softball states, in quotations, because Nebraska is going to be a softball state if it's not already. But it's cool to, because that's the only way you can get better, is really playing against the best. So,
yeah. All right, I got to give a quick shout out to Coach Singleton, because I got to work with her Midland team this year, and I got to watch them make that really cool run to the series as well. And what a It's not a surprise that there's a common theme there between the team she coached for you and the role she played and what she's doing at Midland. So I got to give her team and her a shout out, because they were a lot of fun to work with and did so many things right, like you've been describing, to what Washington did right, the non-technical skills of your sport. All right, since I lied, Jess, any other last thoughts from you?
No, I've been taking notes, and I'll go back and watch this and listen to this several times, Ruby, and every single time you got some gold, you have some wisdom that you shared. And I just thank you for sharing your experiences. And you got a fan over here. And I do believe Nebraska is a softball state, and can't wait to continue to add more fire to that.
Yeah.
Ruby, any last thoughts from you?
Nope.
All right. Well, we really, really appreciate having you on the Max Out Mindset podcast. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Physical abilities such as strength, speed, agility, endurance, and coordination are fundamental in sports. But mental abilities such as focus, concentration, motivation, confidence, resilience, and decision-making can heavily influence an athlete's performance, especially when it matters the most. If you want the mental edge in sport and life, check out the Max Out Mindset for Volleyball book and workbook, or the Max Out Mindset for Softball book and workbook. A guide for coaches, athletes, teams, and parents to help you be in the best position to max out when it matters the most.